This is part 3 of On the Loose, Destination Everest Base Camp with Steve, George, and Ricardo. We're coming in on day 5 as the trekkers make their way up to the little town of Dembochet.
Well, it's after lunch. We are now on the final leg to Dembochet, which is about 2 hours, and we understand about 400 meters, which is about 1,200 feet vertical ascent. So George is just about to come into view and cross the bridge, and the trail that we're going to follow starts up and goes up that valley. If we had gone to the left, we would have gone to a different town, but we don't want to go to that one, so we're going to Dembochet. I might add that it's getting colder and colder. I can see my breath now, and I'm wearing the heaviest gloves that I have. I've got my parka hood over me and then a hat on top of that, but other than that, I feel great. Oh, and did I mention that besides getting cold, little flakes are coming down, but I don't think they're going to be a lot of flakes. We'll do just fine. Well, we're almost to Dembochet. I had to get a quick shot of this before the fog or the cloud, I don't know which this is, rolls in. The snow stopped. It's not much elevation climb left, so we're like horses heading for the barn. Well, we finally arrived at Dembochet, and this is what the surrounding neighborhood looks like. The higher you get, the less amenities you have. I suspect that all those cow pies are what we're burning for fuel. And these aren't yaks, they're cousins to the yaks, but they're in the front yard. Up there is our great room. So here are the rooms that we're going to be staying in. They are individual rooms. You have to come outside and cross over to get to the great room, which is directly behind me. And if you have to go to the toilet, there it is right there. Which of course is something you're not going to want to do in the middle of the night. So here we are in the great room of our little lodge, and it's nice and warm and cozy. The stove there is giving out a lot of heat, and we got some tea kettles on top. So the way that it works here is you spend as little time as possible in your room. You literally stay in this room until the very last moment, and then you run to your little unheated room and jump in the bed while you're still warm. So we haven't gone to our rooms yet. We're still recuperating from the day's hike. We've ordered dinner, and we're prepared to settle in. Now, here we are for 2 days to acclimatize. We're going to do tomorrow just a day hike where we hike up about 500 meters. That's about 1,500 feet elevation change. Hike up and then hike back. The theory is hike high and then sleep low, and that's somehow supposed to further help acclimatize you to the test ahead. So that's what's on the schedule for tomorrow. Well, this is day number 6. Dawned bright, clear, and crisp, but the sunshine makes one heck of a difference. So today is a day where we're at about 4,400 meters, and we're going to hike up to about 5,000 meters and then come back down. There's a school of thought that says that if you do that, that helps you acclimatize. I'm not sure what evidence there is to support that, but that's what we're going to do today. Meanwhile, George is fighting a respiratory infection. Ricardo, with his pharmaceuticals, has given him stuff to take, and we're hoping that will clear up in time for our departure tomorrow to Loche. So it's off to breakfast in just a few minutes. Well, we've been hiking about 45 minutes now, almost all straight up. It's going to continue to be all straight up. But that's the test to help get us acclimatized. There's our little village down there. And of course, as you might imagine, the mountain range hasn't changed from the last time we showed you this shot. Well, I've just been told that we have about an hour more to go to reach the top. I was hoping that my guide would say something like, oh, it's only another 15 or 20 minutes. Meanwhile, I'm almost as high as that cloud. Not quite, but I think if I get to where I'm going, I'll probably be higher than that cloud. We've reached the top, 5,100 meters. The clouds have come in, so we can't see anything. I've been told that 5,100 meters is about 16,080 feet, so that, or 800 feet, so that beats my personal best of 16,500. It's a little windy, I'm starting to get chilled, so we're going to start back down the hill, but I made it to the top. Well, I think I'm about 3/4 of the way down with Ram, our lead guide. As you can still see, the clouds are kind of rolling through. Wind's blowing a bit, it's a little chilly, no snowflakes so far. Going down isn't quite as hard as going up, but it's surprisingly hard on the knees. I'm looking forward to a cup of ginger tea and then maybe a nap. Maybe 2 naps. Day 7. It's a beautiful morning after the clouds of yesterday. Unfortunately, one of our team has a difficult decision to make, and he's already made it. He's now discussing it with Ram, our leader. George has had a respiratory problem for the last couple of days. It's not gotten any better, hasn't gotten any worse, but he has no appetite. It seems to be settled in his chest as opposed to his throat. And so he's discussing with Ram the alternatives. Ram's suggestion, because it's a relatively flat walk today, is that he proceeds to the next town. I think George's preference is to turn around and head to lower altitude and possibly see if a doctor, see if there's a chest x-ray or something. So a difficult choice. We'll find out what George decides in just a moment. Well, George has had his conversation with Ram, and George, what's the outcome?
Well, I'm going to start back today to Nemche Bazaar, because if I need some medical help, that's where I have a better chance of getting it. And so I'll leave with one of the porters today. We'll go back to Tengboshe, stay there tonight, and then the next day we'll go on to Nemche Bazaar, assuming that the antibiotics that Ricardo gave me kick in. By the time I'm to Nemche Bazaar, I'll be perfectly okay. And I'll wait there for you guys, and then we'll go on out together. So that's the plan, and all I'm trying to avoid is going farther up where there's less help if it's needed, then starting back down where there's more help if it's needed. So that's the reason I've made that decision, and Ram agrees.
All right, well, we'll miss you, but your health's much more important.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't want to get stuck up at 15,000 feet, no doctor, within a day's walk. So. Doesn't have to do with the altitude, by the way. Everything I can say, I just picked up something of a bacteria. Could have been back in Kathmandu, and not even on the trail here. So I'm settled on that, and about 8 o'clock we'll leave and part ways, and we'll meet you in 2 days.
See you in 2 days.
Yeah.
So we're on our way to Lebuche. It's about 5 hours worth of trekking, about 1,500 foot elevation gain. We're going to miss you, George, but you've done the right thing. So here we go to Lebuche. Well, there's where we're going for lunch. So far it's been an easy hike. But the next part, to get ourselves up to Loche, that's where we have to go. Loche is somewhere over that saddle. Well, we have arrived at the Thukla fast food restaurant. And over here it's Dukla plus Thukla. Folks are enjoying the sun. And for the first time we're seeing solar heating. So that's pretty cool. The pot looks like it's boiling a bit. It also looks like it's seen better days. I don't think I'm going to stick my hand in there, but there's how they save on yak dung and bottled gas. It's getting a little chilly outside, waiting for Ricardo and Ram, so I decided to come inside just to show you what's going on with folks. Folks are either going up or down from this point. This is the last warm spot for probably the next couple of hours. We haven't reached Le Boucher yet, but these monuments are to those Sherpas that have died on the mountain. There's a number of them. Some smaller ones over there. The very first one that you saw said that the gentleman fell into a 200-foot crevice. That was back in 1971. We also have a few Buddhist flags flying here. We've reached, I think, hopefully the end of the steep part. Not that we won't still have some ups before we get into Le Boucher. Well, this is the little town of Le Boucher. Not much to look at, but I am darn happy to be here. I'm getting chilled, which is not good. It's just been a wind all the time behind me, so hopefully my hotel or lodge or whatever you want to call it isn't too far away. Meanwhile, I guess if I didn't give you the scenic tour of what's around us, should get some of the sunshine. Well, thank goodness for small favors. This is our lodge, Mother Earth House. 5,000 meters, it says. I'll leave you to do the math. I just want to get inside. It's the beginning of day 8. This is an important day because we are going from Le Boucher to Gorek Shep. That's the key point. It's about 200 meters in elevation gain, or about 650 feet. Once we get to Gorek Shep, we're going to drop off our baggage, and then we're going to hike another 300 meters to the old lower Everest base camp, which is what we came to do. So we're excited about that. It's been 7 long days. Some of the days I wasn't sure that we would make it, but we're going to do that. So our thoughts are with George. We haven't been able to communicate to find out if he's okay. We think he is, but we're not totally sure. But anyway, this is day number 8, and we're on our way to Gorek Shep. I understand we're about 30 minutes away from Gorek Shep, so it must be somewhere behind those ridges of rocks. But this is the classic. I had to give you this pan shot because you really haven't seen this particular range before. The other interesting thing is that I suddenly just became aware of that we've been walking alongside of the glacier, and if I was a better narrator, I'd be able to tell you the name of this glacier, but there it is. Awful lot of rocks covered over it, so I don't know whether it's been shrinking, but it starts right up there. So we're still on the way to Gorek Shep. I'm hoping only about 30 minutes away. Well, even though we had only 200 meters of altitude to gain, it seemed to take forever to get here, but there is the little town of Gorek Shep, and when I say little, I mean little. That's it. That will be our jumping off point We're going to the Lower Everest Base Camp. We're supposed to do that this afternoon. I don't know if we have enough in us to do it. It's another 300 meters up. Must be somewhere up there. So anyway, a little town. Of Gorkshep. I don't think we're going to find any Wi-Fi here. This is day 9. We are on the last leg to the lower base camp. We started out at 5 this morning, so the sun is only now just starting to hit the mountaintops. We hope to be there by around 9:30. We're starting to run into a timing issue in that if we can't get there by 9:30, we really need to turn around and start heading back down the mountain to get to where we're going tonight. So we're hopeful that we can make that last push and make it to the lower Everest Base Camp. We've got a little bit of an avalanche going on over there. Not a big one, but certainly not one that I'd want to be in front of. Well, it's hard to believe, but I think I'm actually going to make it. There's Lower Everest Base Camp. I'll zoom in just a little. Not much to look at, but there's a lot of folks underneath those yellow tents that have some hopes and dreams of obviously hitting the big time by making it up to Everest. I'm glad this is all the further we're going. I'm so chilled right now, I can hardly wait for the sunshine to get down here and warm me up. So this Buddhist monument is at the entrance to the base camp. It has mainly Buddhist prayer flags, but there are also some flags of other nationalities. And even though we're thousands of miles from home, you never know what you might find. George, this one's for you. As you can see, Everest Base Camp is quite spread out on this valley. Tents of different sizes. And Ram, where's the trail that leads up to the next camp? I think it goes up through that pass, and we're not going there. This is far enough for our little team. So we're finally here. We've achieved our objective of getting to the lower Everest Base Camp. There were some days when I think Ricardo and I thought we're just not going to make it.
Every day.
Well, yes, every day it seemed. But Ricardo, now that we've made it, how do you feel?
Well, it's like a wow, you know, it's so exhilarating. It seemed like it just wasn't going to happen. Getting up today in the dark and starting out, and it was freezing, and it continued to be freezing, and still, somehow we made it.
We did. And we would not have made it without the help of our guide, Ryan, and his support staff.
While we were happy to make it to the Everest Base Camp, we now had a timing problem. The second part of our day required us to descend 3,300 feet from Gorkshep, the town we had left that morning, down the mountain to a town called Parichi. Based on the speed that Ricardo and I walked, this was about a 5 to 7 hour trip. The problem was that I made it back to Gorkshep at 12:30 p.m., and Ricardo made it back at 1:30 p.m. We should have left for Gorkshep around 11 a.m. Having lunch and then leaving at 2:30 p.m. would mean that we would be trekking for several hours in the dark down the hill before we arrived at Parichi. We had to stay on schedule because we could not afford to miss our plane several days from now then out of Lukla. In hindsight, we should have planned a flex day in our schedule in case something went wrong. We had not done that. Something now was about to go wrong, and we had no flexibility in staying in Gorkshep, recovering overnight, and then starting down the next day. It didn't help that both of us were exhausted. Ram, our guide, recommended that we both rent horses. We rented a couple of small but sturdy horses. The horse station sent along guides to take the reins and lead the horses. They were smart enough not to let us take the reins and possibly drive the horses over the side of the trail. It's a good thing they did take the reins, because in some of the steeper parts of the trail, with the guide pulling on the reins and our porters slapping the horses on their butts, the horses initially balked. We arrived 4 hours later at Perici in the dark, tired, saddle sore, and hungry. The next day we descended from Perici to Tenboche, despite the good weather. It was clear that when Ricardo arrived in Tenboche, the asthma condition that had been developing over the past couple of days was starting to take its toll on the pace he could walk. His arrival 2.5 hours behind me and his physical appearance caused Ram, our guide, to recommend that he ride a horse the next day from Tenboche down to Namche Bazaar. While Ricardo was mentally game to keep trekking, he had developed asthma due to an allergy to dust from the trail and from feathers from his sleeping bag that had been provided by our guide. We were delighted to be reunited with George in Namche Bazaar the next day. He had been to the clinic to be examined, had been given some medicine, and while he still had a bit of a cough, to us it seemed much less severe than when we had parted in the town of Dingbuchi. Due to Ricardo's asthma, the fact that we had to stay on schedule, and the fact that we had 2 more days of trekking to reach Lukla, Ram was able to find a local helicopter service that was able to take Ricardo from Namche Bazaar to Lukla. Coming up next, we're at the Lukla airport, very ready to fly back to Kathmandu. Well, George and I had 2 more days of trek, but we made it back to Lukla, where we were reunited with Ricardo. It's now the day that we get to depart from Lukla, and I have to tell you, we're looking forward to it. This is billed as the world's most dangerous runway. As you can see, it's a pretty short runway, and the plane's at kind of a running start, because when they get to the end, there's a cliff. Coming up next, not everyone makes it out on 2 feet.
All right, so not everyone makes it out on 2 feet, and I'm not sure what happened to that poor soul, but he's being airlifted back to Kathmandu. Well, that's our story. I hope you enjoyed it. My special thanks to Ram of Eco Mission Trek and his very capable staff. And if I can put in a little plug, Eco Mission Trek is based in Kathmandu. He is a very competent guy. He's priced well below the majors. So fire up your search engine and put in Eco, E-C-O, Mission Trek. Ricardo, George, it's been a heck of a story. Ricardo, any last takeaways? Any closing comments?
I think the whole thing is preparation of the journey, getting to Everest Base Camp. It's just a very exciting experience, and especially doing it with 2 great guys. I couldn't have wished for anything more.
George?
No disappointments at all. I've been thinking about this trip for years and wanting to see this area for 30, 40 years anyway. So it's a dream of a lifetime. Wish I could have gotten to base camp myself, but I think I made the right decision to drop back a couple days. I've seen everything I wanted to see, and it's just been a wonderful trip. I like working with Ram at Eco Mission. If I get back this way to Tibet again or Bhutan, he'll be the first guy I call, and I like the guys that work for him. So it's been a 100% enjoyable, hard but enjoyable trip.
So that's our story. That's our show. You've been watching On the Loose with Steve, George, and Ricardo. Thanks for watching.
That's it, guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You're going to be famous now.